It is Tuesday night and we are live. I am happy to be here. We are celebrating a few awesome things here in the city of Tampa, one of them being the parents' volunteer efforts that we've been working for all year are over. And with that comes a new focus for the show. We are starting a new series that I am very excited to share with you. And we're going to walk you through what I do with lots of patients in clinic and lots of patients in the support group that comes here to Tampa by dissecting what it means to have a habit that really changes. Looking at all of your comments here, thank you for assuring me that the sound is good, and I love seeing from where you're from. Before we get into our big topic for tonight, I'm going to do a tradition here on the Dr. Boz Show. One of the reasons I'm a proponent of the ketogenic diet is because you can check your numbers. So I start my show each week by checking my numbers, and sometimes it's better than others, but this week I don't know, it should be okay. It's always one of those moments where you're like, how am I doing? I'm about to show everybody at the same time I find out. So this is a blood sugar counting down from a 5-second and then a ketone. So let's try that again. I didn't put it in quite as quick as I should have. Looking at blood ketones and blood glucose just helps me stay accountable. And this morning there's the ketones counting down, and the blood glucose is looking at 79 glucose and ketones at 3.4. This is at the end of my fast, so I don't wake up in the morning looking like this, but this is, I'm hungry. I'm looking forward. I actually texted husband, please tell me you have pork bellies that you made today. I know he went to Costco, and I'm super excited for food. So I'm gonna not get distracted with my obsessions with hunger 48 hours into this fast. I'm going to have a little bit of ketone powder. Tonight I am doing the cucumber lemon flavor, just to have a packet of that around that is a little lighter flavor, not quite as tart as the strawberry or as the ketone, the raspberry lemonade. And I love the topic that we're talking about tonight, so I really want to get into it. There's a few things I'm going to remind people of, is that at the end of the show, I'll take on your questions. I have a team copying some of your questions from the comment, putting them in a document so you can see them as we talk through them. And it really is a great teaching opportunity for me to shoot cleanup for some things I talk about during the show that maybe I don't clarify well enough. So if you have a question about what we're talking about tonight, I love for the team to put those at the top so I can connect those with everybody. And then I have just want to say out a little bit of praise. If you haven't looked at the email we sent out yesterday, it gave everybody a little foreshadowing for what we're talking about tonight, and that some of the let's see here, where do I want to go? Let's go here. Some of the other praise points that that Michelle, my sister-in-law, is helping to write some of the emails that are going out. So if you haven't signed up for our little tips, we are going through an awesome series. Michelle and I are both learning through this series, and I think you'll just get a lot more enrichment out of the series if you're checking those emails. And we are trying to build value in what we send you. So before I move on to that, I'm going to take time for one review. This is for the book ketoCONTINUUM, and it was sent in just a few days ago by Eric, who says, this is a much delayed thank you to Dr. Bosworth. And I'm going to tie that together, that the best way to say thank you is an Amazon book review. We're going to talk tonight about one of my favorite books, and you should look at how many reviews he has, like 37,000 reviews. A much delayed thank you to Dr. Annette Bosworth for detailing the information needed to successfully use the ketogenic diet, not only for weight loss, but for improving mental health. Some people respond well to simply basic info about how to approach a diet. Many of us do better when we can dive into the detailed intrinsics, as Dr. Boz has thoroughly provided. This book details a man's journey from a 61-year-old with health concerns to a healthy rejuvenation by improving his diet based on the body chemistry of ketogenesis. Dr. Boz weaves his story with detailed information that will assist anyone who needs to lose weight or is facing metabolic health challenges or finds themselves being diabetic. My copy has many sections highlighted in yellow and is serving as a wonderful guide to marching towards improved health. Anyone who wants to learn the details to a healthy journey from obesity to diabetes will enjoy this book. Thank you very much. That is an awesome praise point, and I am very thankful for those that take time to write a review. It is the best way to say thank you. I am an independent author, and the proceeds from the book, and some of the great videos we've been putting out over the last few weeks. I do appreciate all the praise that you've given our channel and our YouTube metrics. I am getting a little more geeked out in a lot of our animations for our shorts, so I hope that you enjoy those bite-sized science information that we're putting together on our page. If you are looking for the place to put in your email, it's at the bottom of this page, and it says join our tribe, enter your email there. So that's at that actually is at let's take away this one and put on this one, bozmd.com. So go ahead and do that. All right, we are going to get into our discussion for tonight, and I'm super excited about this. I've been reading this book for the last year, and for those moms out there that commute with their kids, I'll give a little insight to my journey over the last year. That my 15-year-old son, when we moved from South Dakota, was driving on his own. You get to drive on your own at 14 in South Dakota. Yes, that's crazy. Now, I actually don't really think that, but it is amazing that how scared I was to drive in Tampa, let alone let my 14-year-old drive in Tampa. We moved to Florida, and he is no longer able to drive himself to school. And we set up our life that my office is real close to his school, so we've been driving to school back and forth a lot in the last year. And at first we listened to a little, some praise songs and get ready for school, but I have been listening to this book, Atomic Habits, as I'm trying to help him through how do you be the new kid in town, and how do you push through some things that are hard when you're a 15-year-old boy in a new school. And he has been doing great, but I was so impressed when I was reading the book, Atomic Habits, how many things I focused on my life and said, I need to transfer some of this to the patients that are struggling. And I finally got the ability to start my support group. I have a support group that was in South Dakota before we moved to Tampa. And now that I'm in Tampa, I have a support group every Tuesday morning from 8 to 9 at the bowling alley called the Pin Chasers here on North Armenia. So 4809 North Armenia Avenue. If you want a support group here in Tampa, it's free. Come and join us. But in that process, I get to be introduced to several new folks who are struggling, who remind me what it is to look at the ketogenic diet, or look at the changes that happen in anybody's life, but especially when you've got some bad habits that haunt you on the ketogenic journey, and how do you really unpack those? And they aren't in a bumper sticker. They really are about dissecting looking in the mirror, having a better understanding of how we assess ourselves and how honest we can be with some of the moments where we do okay and we don't do okay. So, or we just fail to reach that goal. And I'm going to use a lot of the parallels over these next several weeks. If you James Clear does a great job of writing the Atomic Habits, and his reviews of 37,000 reviews on Amazon, or whatever the number was. That's not because it's not a great book. It's a great book for just saying, how do you fix a bad habit? How do I stop doing that thing I keep doing? And as I shared, Michelle and I are trying to hone emails that really do correlate to these Tuesday night lives. So if you got the email, you're going to have a little foreshadow for what I'm going to teach you tonight on the show. And then, of course, be putting in your questions to that chat, and I'll try to answer the questions as we shoot cleanup. So I think the best way to give you inspiration to maybe listen to the book on audio, or to download the book or read the book yourself, or follow along. I'm going to pull apart lots of the things he teaches in the book, but I think the step I wanted to not skip over was to share what James Clear says about the word atomic. Habits are something we talk about a lot of times, but the word atomic, I think he does a great job of showing people that it's a big little word all at the same time. And when you look at an atom, it is that smallest part of something that we can measure. We can't find anything smaller than an atom. But the word atomic also means a very explosive, I'll try to find, here we go, the source of immense energy and power. And when you look at a habit that is atomic, I didn't appreciate this in the title when I first started listening to it, as my son and I were commuting back and forth to school. But it truly, as you walk through these steps that we're going to go through in a series of little lessons, if you would, on how can you find something that you're struggling with and improve it. And again, I've coached this through 20 years of helping patients with addiction, but also with just struggling with high blood pressure, struggling with medical problems that they don't want to be on prescription medications for. And how do you cross-reference that in a way of changing something that if you've set a goal and you've tried to reach for something and you fell short, maybe there's something more to the reasons we're falling short. And I think James Clear does an amazing job of just pulling back those layers, very, very thin layers of trying to understand yourself. And, in the ketoCONTINUUM, there are several worksheets where I am trying to get at what he was unpacking. So I just think we're going to marry some of his ideas and my ideas. And hopefully if you've struggled with anything on the ketogenic journey, you'll see the comparisons and be able to apply them to whatever it is you're working on. But let me just do that one more time. So the word atomic being this, the extremely small thing, and a single irreducible unit, meaning the smallest unit that we can measure in something. And atomic also being the source of immense energy and power. And I think when we look at some of the ways habits are changed, really we are trying to get down to this very tiny component. As I look at my notes for tonight, I'm going to share that when people go to change behavior, it's not uncommon for them to walk in the clinic and say, I want to become your patient because I want to lose a bunch of weight. Or I need to be healthier. I've got this thing called diabetes and I want that to go away. And those are great goals. They are definitely perfectly good reasons to bring you into a physician that works on this. However, I will push back that setting a goal with that big of a headline is in part where we fall short. James Clear writes in his book that there is a valley of disappointment. Let me show you this. Let's see, this one right here. So in this image here, he writes about this here, the valley of disappointment. And that when people start to change something, if the results are over here on the side and time is along the bottom, you'll see that we think it should be linear. We think it should be this line, that as soon as we change something and we say, okay, I'm going to start losing weight, and by golly, with the ketogenic diet, many times they're coming from a standard American diet, and they do get weight loss pretty quickly. But it isn't long after that that I think the real engaging part of this weight loss journey becomes very interesting to me. I think it's easy to take anybody through the first few weeks of a ketogenic journey, get the first few pounds off. But wow, I'm so impressed with those that have really applied the steps in the workbook, having never met me, and have lost 100 pounds, have lost 150 pounds. And they're 2 years later where they're still in this journey of really using the psychology that's written in that book and unpacking it a little better, or at least being very honest with themselves. The valley of disappointment, if you see on the screen here, is in this section here, where when people feel discouraged after they put in a few weeks, or usually it's they've been on the ketogenic diet for a while and they are in this stable place where they used to have results and now they're not. And now I'm asking them to step into a new zone of metabolic stress. And whether that is we are taking their eating window down from 16 hours a day. I've had patients eat every minute, the minute they get up to the minute they go to bed. And it's all keto. And indeed, at first they lost weight because of that shift in their metabolic power. But then it doesn't take long for them to stabilize, because they're still, every time they swallow a piece of food, that insulin resistance has really wreaked havoc with the way their cells talk and listen to insulin. And they eat too often. They really need to cut that down. Again, it's a lot easier for them to address that cut down of that eating window when they are in a ketogenic state. They have a sense of satiety. They feel a lot more full. But it's harder. So now I'm asking them to say, I need you to cut down at least a 12-hour window. And the first time we do that, that's actually not so hard. It's when those windows become, they go from 8 to 7 hours. Or I say, if you're going to start counting that calorie with the first, in ketoCONTINUUM number 6, I'll just show you that quick image here. So they get to ketoCONTINUUM number 6, and they've got advanced 16H, which means they're trying not to have any of that fatty drink in the morning, which is commonly associated with a ketogenic meal or ketogenic diet. And that's great. That's fine. You can do that. But if you do that, you actually you have to start counting your eating window at that first calorie. If the coffee's black with salt in it, we don't need you to count that. That's just fine. Keep going the way you are. But this baseline metabolism, you'll find a zone where your weight will stabilize, and you really will find that you are at your ideal body weight without a lot of stress. I mean, there are great things like exercise and saunas and pushing that metabolism in other areas. But when I push them to cut out the calories or move their eating window from 8 o'clock in the morning until 3 o'clock in the afternoon and then stop, that's where they say, what do you mean I can't eat after 3? I mean, not even a handful of nuts or not? And I'm like, no, it's an eating window. And the window closes, your mouth closes. So if you pull up to the garage and you're just about to come home and your eating window closed before you got home, then your body will reset. You're not going to die, but the window is closed. And those are the moments where we find people sabotaging the process by putting up a very almost profound statement that they said, well, I made this little change and nothing happened. I'm one to look at not just the first few days, but if you look at this valley of disappointment, there is quite a time in here where we change a habit and we don't get to see the results. And it's this part that I'm gonna ask you to join us, to find something that you're working on, and or that if you are looking to go to the next step in the keto continuum, maybe you've never fasted, maybe your eating window can get down to 4 hours for a few days, but after that it spreads right back open to 8 to 10 hours of eating, which if you have insulin resistance, I need you to live in this zone of red until you can see the change. And unfortunately, with years of insulin resistance, I've found people living in this valley of disappointment, just like James Clear talks about in his book, that the amount of time it takes to see the results is very much linked to how insulin resistant they are. And even when they're doing all the right things, I have seen them give up saying, Doc, it's not working for me. It's not working for me. And I would like to show you some steps that when I look at setting the goal for people to say, I'm insulin resistant and I want to lose this weight, they walk through the door, and if I could put if I could have a glass to look in the future and say, which ones are going to be the winners? Who's going to be the ones who get the weight off, who reverse that insulin resistance, they get off of their blood pressure medicines, they get off of their diabetes medicines, and they really do reverse the metabolism problems that have acquired over those last 30 years. Some of them, it's absolutely timing, like they didn't quite have. Look at those patients who have a very strict, almost disconnect, that they made a change, they really did improve their eating window. And as I encourage them and they're looking at their Dr. Boz ratio, they're like, my ketones are low, my sugar is still too high, this doesn't work for me. And now they're ready to give up. And I will tell you that some people are lucky enough that they are early in that metabolic shift. They can see just enough improvement where they stay the course. And I always like to point out at the beginning of the goal, both of those audiences had the problem of saying the end goal was to lose weight or not to lose weight. The end goal was getting off the medications or staying on the medications. They have this profound goal, which I'm all about goals, but there becomes a dichotomy of either I'm succeeding or I'm failing. And when they push that journey, that they judge how well they're doing by, did I reach the goal? Am I there yet? Why am I still on the blood pressure medicines? You know, the neighbor next to me has has improved well enough. They're off their prescription medications. They've lost 10 pounds. It's even worse when it is a husband and wife. My husband lost the weight really quickly, and I still am struggling. And it is that separation where they're having is it a plus or a minus? And when anything in between, they get lost in this valley of disappointment. And those are the kinds of things where I'm going to help you walk through a couple things that I'd like you to focus on. And I, again, adopted them from what James Clear talks about in Atomic Changes, which is a much different focus. That when people are looking for, I can't help but connect back to some of the stories that have come from the support group that we have here in Tampa. Just a few weeks of meeting, and the stories are very rich. Some of them within a year of really committing to consistently watching their numbers and knowing that they didn't have a lot of results at the beginning, but it's a year later, and the arthritis that crippled her to the point where she used a cane, she's no longer using a cane. It's Florida, so she says some of the folks that come to her church are snowbirders. So the last snapshot they had of her was they didn't have, she was the lady that walked with a cane. And then they show back up a year later, and she's down like quite significant amount of weight. But most importantly, she's got energy, and she's serving at her church, and she is not with a cane. And of course, if you're looking at the scorekeeping, she had a cane and she doesn't. I reached the goal or I didn't. And that dichotomy, when people go into a process such as reversing metabolic problems, it is what's happening at a deep cellular level that needs to be good enough to improve it, meaning I still need folks checking their numbers, but it's that mindset that really does shift how to help them succeed, how to get them to the next level. So I have a couple of keynote slides here that I think it's on this one. Be careful. Let's see here. I'm going to go to take that away. Oh, thank you. All right. So this is, and I think I have a little text I was going to put here. So let's take this away. So just looking at some of the atomic keto that we are going to combine some of Mr. James Clear's teachings and some of the keto stuff. And that is, just forget about your goals, especially if you've gotten through those first 6 weeks. You know how to be a ketone. You've looked at that the ketogenic diet means you're actually producing ketones, and you have confirmed that you're producing ketones. But when we look at places where a goal of having this plus or minus, winners or losers, I'm going to push back and say, forget about the goals and focus on your systems. And we're going to unpack this a lot more in the weeks to come. But it is a mentality that says, if you want to see this atomic changes of the people who change these little bitty things that go on between their ears, the way they think, the way they approach this, true change in their life, that process, first of all, it's reproducible. It is teachable. Sometimes I'm having to teach them to not be the person they've been in the past. There's some identity things we're going to talk about. But it really is a shift of focus, and just stop thinking about the goal and start thinking about what are the steps that are required. And you say, well, gee, it's the ketogenic diet. We aren't the steps that are required to, peak ketones and get your glucose less, have high fat and low carbohydrates, keep your carbs below 20. Yep, all those are important. So those are some steps. Yes, they are. But there's something usually more to it. And so I'm hoping that in the next week, you can find a spot in the ketogenic journey that you're working on and identify it. That's saying, all right, here's where it is I keep falling. Here's where it is that I really have a behavior that keeps sabotaging my success. And you're probably stuck in the valley of disappointment if that's been you. And that valley isn't going to go anywhere, but to transcend and come out the other side, to take that little red zone and say, how do I see the results on the other side? That part that's called time, how you get that time to stretch and give you the reward is in your mind. It's in a few things we're going to go through right here. So we're going to have you do a few things as you really contemplate and say, all right, I'm going to change some things. This morning at my support group, I shared some of the things I want to change. And oopsie, not that one, this one. What I walked through with the folks on my support team here was we're going to use the acronym called P.L.A.T.E, which I thought was very appropriate for the ketogenic diet. And what I would like you to do is take out a note card. Probably I have about 6 of them that are going in my purse, and I'm going to find the moments of the things I want to change. And I'm still not sure that sharing my goal here is the right idea, because I'm going to struggle. I know I'm going to struggle. I'm happy to be transparent about my struggle. I think that's where people learn. I think that's where that authentic, here's what it looks like, and it gets messy when I want to change something. But when I look what is on my plate, I want you to identify and have a 3x5 note card. Really, handwriting this is a very big part of how you do this. Yes, you can put it in your phone and keep track of this in your phone, but there is something about holding on to the note cards, and we're going to arrange them in a way that says, oh, studying myself was really important here. So let's go through, what does the P.L.A.T.E stand for? And if you got the email, you're going to know what this stands for already, but that's okay. The first thing we talk about is when you can see this problem unwinding. Identify, is there a person that you're with? Is there a person, as we get several note cards gathered over this week, during moments where you're saying, yep, this is where I screw it up. This is where I struggle. Just having the courage. Nobody else needs to see these note cards. They're for you. They're for you to understand you. And that's how we get these tiny atomic habits. I need you to find that tiny atomic change that's sabotaging you. It is in your mind, but we have to unpack the moment. So as I look at places where patients say, this is where I screw it up. I can do a 4-hour eating window for 6 days and then something happens. It's in those moments. That's not the only time they fail. They had temptations along the way that maybe weren't as big of a fail. And I want you to write down these 5 things about the moment. First thing is, what persons are around you? And if you're alone, well, that's a short list. But the second thing is the location. Is there a certain place, like when I drive home, or when I am at the school, or when I'm at the office, is there a location that you're at? And it doesn't have to be a lot, just where are you at? What's the location? The next thing is, what activity are you doing? Every time I go to the movie, every time I walk in the kitchen door or the house, and I head into the kitchen, I do this activity. Look at what that is. And even if it's after you've screwed it up, and you're sitting there kind of pouting, which I do too, saying, okay, how did I screw that up? Just write these things down. We're going to study this as the weeks go by. The fourth thing that we talk about is timing. So what part of the day is it? I've had a few activities where I've done not this exact process, but a very similar, where we're looking at their notebook and we're saying, do you notice that every time that you eat late at night, that it's the next day that you're having a heck of a time? Every time that the eating went past a certain hour, so the timing of when are you having the struggle? When is that little bitty thread of giving up or saying I'm not going to do this affecting you? And the E is probably the most important, and that is what emotions happened. Was it that you were irritable? Was it that you were hungry? Was it that you were ticked off or disappointed or lonely? And I look back to the support room that I had in Sioux Falls for the clinic, and along the ceiling or right under the ceiling, I had posters up there, and each emotion that we felt in life would have several descriptions. I'm the mom of boys, and sometimes boys don't have words for those emotions. But in my house, we would do things called high lows, where we would say, hey, this is, tell me about the highest moment of your day. Tell me about the lowest moment of your day. And they would sigh and be really dramatic about, I don't want to do this. This is dumb, Mom. I don't want to do it. I don't care. You got to do it. And really what I was working towards was I was kind of shocked that there were grown men that they knew two emotions, mad or happy, mad or fine. And you're like, wait a minute, there's way more to this than those two emotions. And when I put them up on the wall, I would ask them to say, I'm going to come to you, and you can't use these two words that you've used every week in the last 6 times you've checked in. I need you to find a deeper level to what you're feeling. So as you look at this moment, and especially if you're sitting in the moment of pouting and you're irritated that you've just screwed it up, unpack that. I would highly encourage you to get at least 5 note cards over the next week as you're studying yourself. And if you're watching this on replay, there's a few things that finding a weekly process about, just put that note card in your pocket, put it in your purse, and when you find yourself on the other side of not doing great, which I don't know about you, but I've done, and I've had hundreds of thousands of patients screw it up, where they really can't seem to unpack what's going on in their own minds. And when we say, yeah, here's the science behind the ketogenic journey, and I've got that written out in a book, but the psychology of, for instance, in the story ketoCONTINUUM, why was David able to cut his eating window to 1 hour, do really well, have this amazing metabolic resurrection? But that did not work in his life. He had a wife and he had a son that if he wanted to continue to be in relationship with them, that was not going to work. And getting him to see that part of his journey, that you're doing great. We can find a way to succeed by not pushing these trigger buttons, because as soon as I get the whole family in an uproar that your eating window is only an hour, you've lost everyone on your support system, and now we can't move. There's no path forward. You're going to fail. As I look at some of those, struggles, the other part that I am, very cognizant about is when people reach a goal, they are happy for a moment. When people really can change how it is that they're thinking about the process, that they learn to embrace the moment where, yeah, I get home and I like to go to the fridge and I open it up and these are the things that are in it. So I've learned, don't buy those things. Don't put them in the fridge. If you find yourself there with that bright light and your hand on the door looking into your refrigerator, set it up so it's really hard for the next bad choice to go forward. And I mean, I'm eating when I shouldn't be. And in the patients who get away from saying, I reached the goal or I didn't, this achieving the goal for this moment of glory, this moment of feeling good, instead of saying, you know what, I'm going to find the power to get through this moment. I'm going to see that this moment is hard. This moment of saying no is difficult, but there's some little pleasure that says I can do this, and take pride in saying I'm the kind of person that when a difficult moment does come, I don't get it right every time. But I really do find that that pride in saying I made it through that moment and I made the right choice. And it's in those mindsets that can find identity in the change of behavior, instead of it being, oh, poor me, I can't have food, I'm on this diet, it doesn't work, that won't let me have it. Those victim mentalities, that's what leads to sabotage. That's not the mindset of somebody who's successfully made it to the journey that really is consistent with how do you have health. And as I look at You know, one of the things that you're sharing this book as I travel with my son back and forth to school, it's not an accident that I'm doing that. I want him to see me struggle. I want him to hear I tried and I did some things well and I didn't do other things well. I don't want to be the parent that imprints on him saying, poor me, it's such a victim, life is so hard. You know, I fast on Mondays, so that means we, you know, get in the car and usually he has a breakfast on the way to school, and I have really drawn into the identity that I'm someone who drinks black coffee with salt, and that I don't have the heavy whipping cream very often. I actually have learned to have the identity that I arrived on the other side of that. But he saw me do that. He saw what it looked like to say, oh, I love it. It's my favorite. I just love the taste of it. And then to deny myself, I have to find glory in being that person that says, you know what? I'm doing well today. I'm not going to do that. And I'm okay with that. Not, oh, it's so hard to do this, finding that victim voice, because what happens is something called a mirror neuron, where he is imprinting my behavior. He is watching how I deal with it, and it may not be in the moment, but I don't want him to do that. I want him to be the kind of kid who says, I can do this. I can push through and find the way to get to the right answer, or at least the one that it is harder. It's harder to not drink the creamed coffee. It is harder to have an eating window that's only 4 hours. It is harder to go 2 days without food. Yes, but there is some part of your journey where when you can start to look at, can I do this? Can I take pleasure in doing something difficult? Which is where the most interesting lives show up in this world. They aren't the ones who it's easy and they find victim in every corner that life went wrong. They don't share the victim side of their story. They say, you know what? It's been a struggle, but I'm doing it. I'm finding that journey. And in an authentic way, really find a new identity. And really, that's what I hope to help you do as we go through this book together. We're going to talk keto. We're going to get to your questions here in just a minute. And I'm very excited about what I'm looking forward to in this book. Join us for the emails, which will reveal a little bit more on what we're doing. And I'll look forward to answering your questions for the ketogenic diet, maybe how it relates to changing behavior. And we'll hop over to that side of the questions. I have that written here, right? Yeah, there we go. So looking at the questions for March 1st. Wow, we only have one so far. That's great. Oh, we got a couple coming in. So find your why is a little different than working on identity and process. Yes, let me hop over and show you this on the workbook. I'm going to grab it from right behind me. So yes, when I wrote the workbook, I hadn't read Atomic Habits, but we have a lot of parallels. I actually, it's one of my goals for the year that I'm able to find enough momentum behind what I'm going to teach in the next few weeks here that maybe I could get an interview with Mr. James Clear. I've heard several of his interviews. He does a great job. And clearly he has the ability to do an interview because he's done lots of them. But when you look at some of what he sorts out at the beginning of that book and says, well, tell me about, as he's unpacking how to change identity and how to move, how to manipulate the easy parts, the tiny parts of a process so that an end goal is reachable. It's just a very brilliant process. What Daniel's writing in on is that in the workbook, I talk about, all right, you want to see a shift in your identity, which is what Mr. James Clear is really looking at doing in that book. You will have no problem doing that when you have the right reason why you're changing. So in the workbook, I push people to do this, especially if you're in my support group here in Tampa. If you're struggling, and I ask you, well, what is the reason you're doing this, and you can't think of the reason why you're doing it, I'm going to say I need you to push back and spend a little time alone, quiet, no distractions, and really answer that question, why? Why do you want to have better health? What's motivating you? I give lots of reasons in there, and they've come from many answers of patients over the years. And that part of where do you improve your success rate is really tapping into the identity of what is it that you're headed for that you don't like. And that part starts with, why are you trying to go keto? For those of you that read the book any way you can, you'll know that I'd heard about every fad diet there was in medicine and wasn't really interested in doing the ketogenic diet, except that I was curious how it was helping these neuroscientists to improve brain outcomes as fast as they were. And then my mom chose not to have chemotherapy, and she needed it if she was going to live. So my why was my mom, and helping her. It was a hard diet to do. This was 2015. Nobody else was talking about it. So I'm like, Mom, I'll do it with you. And my why was her. And it really is a core part of my identity that, oh, I'm not going to screw it up because my mother's actually depending on me to answer this with her, to do this with her, to be able to show her that my struggle happened and I figured it out. So that why is real. And when I look at some of the steps that we're going to go through, knowing your why at the beginning of this is going to make it much easier. Somebody else asked in the book, what page are these emotion charts on? So this is actually one of my favorite things to do when people are struggling, is that there is a chart that says, if you're struggling, I want you to unpack this 10-minute moment here. And I've done this as a group, and then I've asked people to go home and get me 3 or 4 of them over the week about how well can you get out of your own head? How well can you dissect the moment on a 30-second timer? I'm just trying to find the page for the person that asked. Yeah, here it is, page 70. I'll show you in the view, and I have it on. So it just says, it's your food craving exercise, and I do a very similar thing to what James Clear does, and that is, you have to find yourself in the depths of this moment. Those little note cards are going to lead to doing a few of these activities of what happens in that 10 minutes. If you can find yourself in the 10 minutes and not give in, like the note cards, I'm not asking you to do that this week, but the note cards are even after you've screwed it up. What was the person you were with? What was the location you were at? What was the activity you were doing? What was the timing of it, and what is the emotion you're feeling? And that really is a step in the direction that gets people headed in the right direction, but that's because you can look at yourself, you can analyze yourself. All right, let's go to the next question. Here we go. So the first one was, find your why is a little different than working on identity and process, but they're going to dovetail pretty nicely. So Linda says, I found your channel. I don't have a gallbladder. Is keto okay for me? I get this one a lot. I will answer it again. Yes, your gallbladder is a place that stores bile. It's a bag that stores bile, but all that bile comes from your liver. The liver is going to be signaled by some endocrine hormones that you've just eaten fat. So there were places that contracted your nerve. A hormone, cholecystokinin, would contract your gallbladder and squeeze out the bile into your intestines, and that was linked to consumption of fat. That I'm sorry you don't have a gallbladder. You'll be just fine without one. Your liver still makes plenty of bile every time you eat fat, so you'll be fine. Sometimes when they first start on the ketogenic diet, their liver's a little out of shape. They haven't been eating high fat in the setting of low carbohydrates, so they don't make quite enough fat. They will get some loose stools as one clue that they are not emulsifying the fat well enough with their bile. It gets better. Stay the course. I push my patients to be having some MCT C8C10 soft gels, just a little bit of that very specialized oil. It just trains that first part of your gut to be a little more better at stimulating the cholecystokinin, as well as turning on some ketones, which makes them feel better. That fat you do not digest. You don't need any bile to absorb C8C10. So the gallbladder is obsolete. There are only a couple of fats that you don't need bile for, C8 and C10. That's MCT oil, C8, C10 are two of them. And there's some of the, somewhere I had that bottle around here somewhere, supplements that I offer to my patients, and I do sell on the website too. All right, good question. Let's go to the next question. Tracy writes in and says, actually, Linda, sorry. No, the next one, sorry, Tracy. I am so cranky and anxious in ketosis. I've never been over 1.1 and I want it for chemo brain. Okay, so if you're looking at low ketone that's not low. 1.1 isn't bad, but why am I so cranky or anxious when I'm in ketosis? So when ketones are on the rise, it is often associated with a drop in your, let's see if I can do this one here, a drop in your glucose. So if you want to make somebody anxious, there's several studies where they keep the glucose very stable by having an insulin and glucose infusion. So they keep that glucose very, very, very stable. When they drop the glucose, they find very anxious feeling, as not so much where it gets low and stays low, but in the change of glucose. So when I see people that are just kind of figuring out how to really stay in a state of ketosis, they do get anxious at times. And it's often associated with a change in their metabolism where the glucose is really coming down and their ketone production isn't quite as solid. They're not quite as strong in their keto adaptation or in those cells' ability to use ketones for fuel. So Tracy, my advice for you would be to actually to put ketones in circulation without pushing your metabolism for about 2 weeks. That means either C8, C10, that's the MCT oil that you don't need to absorb, or don't need to digest, you just absorb, or to have supplemental ketones. By sipping on ketones, by producing ketones from C8, C10, again, once that fat is in your circulation, it can cross the blood-brain barrier, one of the few fats that can be used as fuel in the brain. So very good for chemo brain, very good for the emotional and memory issues that are linked to specifically having C10 in there. I know C8 is very well marketed as a great way to make ketones, but I still think there's some science on the cutting room floor that hasn't been produced yet, that the C10 has some very important links to memory cycles for people struggling with brain performance. So I would specifically push you for C8, C10, and I would also encourage you to have ketones in circulation for a solid 2 weeks. What that really does is it causes that mitochondria to do a workout. Like my ketones at the beginning of this, 2 days without eating, my body's getting a pretty darn good workout for using ketones as a fuel. But when your body's been through a tough time, so having had chemo, having just had a metabolic phase where you got beat up from the drugs, and praise God you're alive, that's what we were hoping, but now we need to repair. And getting that system to really engage in the use of ketones and the production of ketones, and then that higher performance of metabolism, they have to practice it. So that feeling of a mood getting irritable or getting very stressed during your during that change in glucose, the antidote is to have a stronger mitochondria that know how to use a ketone. And the way that you can hack that is to keep them in circulation for about 2 weeks. That's really what the supplements are for, is to bridge people from one point in their metabolism to the next. They'll stabilize, they'll do well, they won't need the supplements for the while, but the next time we got to launch their metabolism to the higher level, sometimes they have to practice again. They have to kind of re-wake up some of the cells that maybe used it really well the first 2 weeks of keto when all those ketones were floating around. But now they've stabilized and their ketones have been, 0.4 and 0.3 and never really got out of that zone for a while. So putting higher ketones in circulation really allows them to push their metabolism. They can push that metabolic stress and not have that irritability, crankiness, and anxiousness because their cells can use a ketone readily. They're not, the parts aren't dormant. Good question. All right, let's go to next question. So we have Jennifer that says, I had a lap band. Oof, sorry about that. How can I eat all my macros in just 2 meals a day? Well, that's a good question. Constriction of food going in is not it's not the biggest barrier I've seen to doing a ketogenic diet, but the lap band does change the volume. So I will tell you, Jennifer, that many people have succeeded at this, and the way they do it is their food is very nutrient dense. So again, the volume of food is what struggles on a lap band to getting it past that stricture, or that constriction that was placed. If I look at nutrient dense foods, and I give you some of my favorites. Number one is sardines. That little can is, not only does it have a portion control, but you could live off of sardines. And I know people say, oh, I don't like the taste. That's not, just man up. Your palate will get used to it. It's like tuna with oil. It's not bad. But you have to get there. You have to put it on your tongue and actually not be crabby about it. You have to try to like it. Just like that moment where you can either choose to be the victim or not. Sardines are a wonderful nutrient-dense food. Other foods that I put on the list for people that have strictures, which is what a lap band is that they eat pork bellies are usually on the list. I like mine crunchy. I have a little short of my favorite way to have it. That's what I'm praying my husband has when I get home tonight. But I also, I tell them Braunschweiger, which is a form of liver pate. That's one of my favorite foods. When that's in our fridge, it's gone within 3 days. Everybody in our family eats it. They put a little horseradish on it, and it really is a high fatty meat that doesn't take a lot of volume, but it's got vitamin C. It is packed with vitamins and the nutrients in just the smaller amounts, so they can really do that. Other things I encourage people with a lap band to do are, bone marrow. Bone marrow is, again, very fatty, high dense nutrients. So again, I touched on organ meat, I touched on tiny little fish, and I touched on bone marrow. Now, that may sound like this place that you don't want to go, but I promise you that you get the salt to make it taste good. It's a high fatty food. It really is satiating and does taste good, but you got to step over the threshold and put those on your taste buds in order to find joy in them. All right, let's do one more here, and here we go. So my coworker had a thyroid, and doesn't have a thyroid. That makes more sense. My coworker doesn't have a thyroid and is very hesitant to try keto. I would love to have a great Dr. Boz answer that I can share with her. Well, thyroid doesn't most people don't have a thyroid because their immune system destroyed it. When I look at the people that I really do pray for people to find health in eating and not end up as a person at my clinic, and the process of sorting the ones that I really think just find the most amazing health on the other side are people who've had an organ destroyed by or limited by an autoimmune problem. If they have an immune problem that is attacking their thyroid to the point that it destroyed their thyroid, which is, just going to guess that's why your coworker doesn't have a thyroid. Either they lost it to cancer, and then I would just have her read the first 3 chapters of Any Way You Can. That cancer story, if their heart isn't touched by that story, I don't know what to say. But if they have an autoimmune disorder, it is truly one of those places where the thyroid is something that your coworker can measure, that the doctor has found. They've put a name on it. They've given it a label and a title and a diagnostic code. So yes, that thyroid is this safe medical problem that's easy to manage, and it's got this slot in it. But the general sense of what happens with autoimmune is the immune system went so wacky that it attacked itself. Instead of attacking the foreign objects of viruses or bacteria or foreign objects that get into our system, That's what your immune system is supposed to attack. When it screws up so badly that it attacks one of its own organs, and that's what happens in Crohn's disease, in thyroid disease, in multiple sclerosis, in rheumatoid arthritis, in lupus. Those are all processes within the human body where it attacked a system, and once it starts, it doesn't turn off. And once that organ's done being attacked, it finds another one. That's why one autoimmune disorder is the highest risk for having two autoimmune disorders. Those processes accumulate. The error still keeps happening. It just finds another organ to attack. And the life associated with it is what's sad, is that it doesn't have to be that way. You can dramatically shut down that autoimmune response when your body is without inflammation. And that is really the core behind what the ketogenic diet is it's the reversal of inflammation. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I hope it does, because those are some of the people I pray for the hardest are the ones who've had cancer and are post-cancer trying to figure out how not to have the next one, and then those with autoimmune disorders. All right, last question from Tony. I have both of your books and am highly motivated. Oh, good deal. After 5 weeks, I've only lost 4 pounds. My blood shows I'm in ketosis, averaging 0.8. I am likely insulin resistant. How do I fix me? Well, that is a great question, Tony. When I look at some of the key things that you will probably figure out sooner than later, but I'm going to show you in this little screen here. Let me go over and go here. So if you look, this is the ketoCONTINUUM, and it does walk you through the different steps. So when I look at somebody who has been keto for 5 weeks, I expect, and I don't know if you can see this part over here. Let's make sure I got my little pen turned on. See that 4 to 6 weeks over here? So this beginner stage is in that 4 to 6 weeks. So I expect that you're somewhere in here. So if they have, accidentally missed a meal, or they have at least that they're sticking to the 20 carbs or less, I would expect by this time you've probably accidentally missed a meal. I don't know, but when people get stuck and they haven't lost the weight, they need to move to the next level. This is really where the workbook comes in the best, because some of the stuff that James Clear asks people to do in that Atomic Habits, I specifically outline. And I hadn't read his book before I wrote that book. I take you to the next step. When I look at baseline metabolisms, this is the place where you can live there. You should be able to live there. So somewhere in this zone of 16-8, let me use this here, where either they're using, hold on a second, right here, 16-8 or advanced 16-8 is the very beginning place of where people's restrictions start to haunt them, which is why I'm doing this Atomic series. It really is a change in how they identify themselves. And when I'm asking them to squeeze that food into a closer and narrower area, and then I'm telling them moving it closer to sunrise, not eating after sunset, that's when we start to see these behaviors that they may get through the first week, they may even get through the second week, but then something happens, and every time they get to that place where I want them to move to the next level of metabolic health, it's the emotional things that are getting in the way of them. So the way I would fix you, which is a great, cute way to say that, let's go to here. The way I would fix you would be to start with saying, where are you at on that continuum, and how long have you been there? And then do you think that you could find yourself in the next step over the next few weeks? And what a great way to segue into the next few weeks of our ketoCONTINUUM journey, and using Atomic Keto to find that little step and say, here's the place where you're falling off, and by putting together a few of those note cards, you're going to be able to study the moments a lot better. All right, I'm going to check. I don't know if when you have ketones as high as they were at the beginning of the show, I don't know how I'm going to get them any higher with a little supplement, but I still try to check. And my glucose meter has been a little wonky recently. So ketones are 0.2, and there that sugar did it again. I'm gonna have to recalibrate this bad boy. It is about, so my ketones actually went down from, I think, what was it, 3.1 the first time around? Let me go back to the chat over here. And then the second time around was 2.7. So let me, that one stung a little bit. All right, we'll try the glucose again and see if I can get it to read. Yeah, glucose is about 70, ketones at 2.7, and I'm telling you, honey, I really hope there's pork bellies at home because I'm hungry. I am Dr. Boz. We reverse medical problems on this channel, and we improve your health one ketone at a time. Join me by following up with our emails and seeing us each week on Tuesday Night Lives. If you're watching this on replay, I talked about mirror neurons earlier tonight, and there is a really good video that I have explaining that more and really unpacking that. So why don't you click on the end screen and take a look at it. And for those of you that tuned in live, we'll see you next week. Thank you for your questions, and thanks for joining me on Tuesday night.